There are numerous factors that affect bag speed on a cornhole board. The first one to mention is new versus broken in bags. A new set of bags will be shiny and stiff. The finish on the fibers are smooth and slippery. Conversely, bags that are broken in will have a rougher fiber finish and they are more flexible, which will increase the surface contact. Broken in bags will also have a fuzzy surface fibers that will act to increase the friction as the bag slides across the surface. Next, we'll talk about foreign substances, which are things that are added to the bag or the board surface. These include hand and face oils, dirt and grime, conditioners and fabric softeners, and other things that affect the bag slide. The board finish plays a big part in how the bags slide across it. For instance, boards that are UV coated will tend to play faster than those that are poly coated. Newly coated poly boards will play a little slower at first, and once they are broken in and aged, they will play faster. Failing coatings that have cracks or excessive roughness will affect bag slide as well. Finally, on our list, we have temperature and humidity, which will be the focal point for the remainder of this video. These environmental conditions can be the most tricky as they can change from hour to hour. For instance, if you're playing indoors and the air conditioning comes on, this will cool the air and reduce the humidity. Or if you're playing outside and the sun goes down, the quick change in temperature can result in condensation forming on the board surface. This just happens to be the case for the world's largest cornhole tournament called the Throwdown, which we'll talk more about now. The Throwdown, a massive multi-day summer cornhole tournament played in the beautiful beach town of Ventura, California. The brainchild of John Carrion, it is a 3-day festival designed and tailored to those who love the sport of cornhole. 1,024 teams battling for $300K in cash payouts. The primary sponsor is John's own seafood restaurant Spencer McKenzie, which has the best fish tacos in the world. Many attend this event just for the special sauces and live music. But thousands come to compete in the 2-day featured doubles event. This year, like last year, the event is held only a few hundred feet from Ventura Beach. The weather is very much dictated by the cool Pacific Ocean, making it somewhat predictable yet challenging for all-day cornhole tournaments. Like most all-day outside cornhole events, you can expect weather variations that will affect how the bags fly through the air and how they slide up the board. In the morning, there is a calm, cool, misty marine layer. Expect the boards to play slow when you arrive at 10 a.m. to warm up. But fear not, by around noontime the sun will have burned off that mist and dried off the boards. Unfortunately, this is about when the wind gusts start to pick up. Around 3 p.m. the boards are at their hottest and driest and the wind is at the strongest. Throwing into the gusty winds is what separates the mentally weak from the strong. It will take your 10 ppr and slice it in half. Yet, some are able to figure it out as they forcefully spin their bag through the turbulent air and onto the board. In the late afternoon, things start to return to normal. The temp cools a bit and the winds die down. If on Saturday you are playing in Crew Cup, or Sunday you made it this far into the evening, you are not out of the weeds yet. As the sun starts to set, moisture begins to condense on the boards, making them sticky again. These 5 distinct playing conditions make up the Throwdown daily weather cycle that readily mocks your cornhole abilities. So what can you, the player, do to prepare? Plan your bag selection. Consistent bag speed is one of the biggest factors in throwing your best game. Conditions like temperature, humidity, and wind speed need to be taken into account when making your decision. Certainly you can wing it, but having a plan will improve your game. A commonly used metric that grades your performance as a cornhole player is called PPR, or points per round. It's similar to your batting average in baseball. In a game, it's the total points you scored divided by the number of rounds in the game. The team with a higher game PPR always wins the game. Therefore, it is common sense that to win games, the player or team needs to maximize their PPR to the greatest potential. Being able to use your own bags in all ACL events and now in the Throwdown is a tremendous advantage if used wisely. Your PPR will improve if you use a bag that provides you with your optimal bag speed. This graph illustrates how PPR can be related to bag speed. Everybody has their own PPR profile. This shows a profile for a typical advanced player, and it can be seen that the optimal bag speed for this player is 6.7. As weather conditions change, so will the bag speeds. So if the player wants to stay near a 6.7, they will need to change their bags, or primarily throw on the other side of the bag. So essentially, if you bring 2 sets of bags to a tournament, you have 4 different sides to which you can utilize to keep yourself near the optimal bag speed. That brings us to the bags we selected for Throwdown 2022. As a certified bag partner, we were given the honor to select 2 series of bags from our lineup to be used for this tournament. After careful consideration, we selected the Psycho X and the Widow R. Both relatively new series to the Ultra lineup, they provide a great spectrum of bag speed options and control for many different throwing styles and abilities. Let's take a look at the speed profile chart for both of these series, starting with the Widow R. First, let me start off by saying that the speed charts represented here are approximate and based off recent observations and experience. We hope to make accurate charts based on environmentally controlled test data in the near future. The red stars represent the advertised slow side of the Widow R, whereas the green circles represent the fast side. We can see that in most dry conditions that this holds true, where the slow side is the slower side. But when we start to add moisture and humidity, the slow side starts to speed up and becomes the faster side. We call this unique characteristic a bag speed crossover. Let's take a second to define speed crossover. Speed crossover is when the advertised speed of one side becomes faster or slower than the other side. In this particular case, the Widow R on a hot dry board will play very sticky, but if you add a little moisture, the slow side will become the fast side. And this is seen in the chart where the speed crossover between dry and humid conditions exist. Now let's compare that to the speed chart of the Psycho X. We can see as we transition from dry to humid conditions that there's no crossover point. That's because both sides of the bag are made using polyester-based fabrics. Players who have used ultra bags such as the Viper and Widow know that they slow down in humid conditions and speed up in dry conditions. These bags mostly behave the same way as the Psycho X shown here in this chart. Let's take a look at this in action. We have a new set of ultra boards outside sitting in the sun. You can see that the humidity is around 39%, the air temperature around 83 degrees Fahrenheit, and the board temperature around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's look how the Psycho X bag does under these conditions. You can see that the slow side moves quite well. The fast side is slick, but not uncontrollable, making the Psycho X a great bag in these conditions. Now let's take a look at the Widow R. The Widow R slow side, pretty sticky. The fast side moves a bit. This too would be a good bag in these conditions. Now let's try to add water to the boards. Here I'm going to take a spray bottle and I'm going to spray the surface with water. Let's take that same Widow R bag and let it slide across, and as you can see, as I'm adding water to the surface, the slide is somewhat unaffected, and potentially it's even faster. If we do that on the fast side, you can see how quickly now the bag just stops. Let's take that Psycho X and do the same thing. Let's add some moisture to the boards. Let that water work into the fabric. Boom, you can start to see the stick side is super sticky. The fast side of the Psycho X has slowed down but still moved. Let's take another look at that Widow R slow side and how it just moves in damp conditions. Fabric is fairly wet at this point and it just still slides. So what does this all mean? How can you maximize your PPR at the Throwdown tournament? If you have both of these bags at your disposal, then you can choose the speed that works best for your game. Let me give you an example of a strategy plan. You and your partner arrive at the Throwdown at 10 a.m. to warm up, and the boards are sticky. You decide that the Widow R on the carpet side is moving best. But as the boards start to warm up and the marine layer dissipates, you shift to the Psycho X because it is more hole friendly and the speeds are controllable. At the midpoint of the day, when the boards are fully dry and hot and the winds are gusty, you may decide that just being able to keep the bags on the board is sufficient and go back to the Widow R. Then as temps begin to cool and the winds calm down a bit, you go back to the Psycho X for the same reason as before. And finally, as moisture starts to collect on the board, you go back to the Widow R to complete the day. This is simply an example strategy that a team may employ to achieve their highest PPR possible given the challenging conditions present. This concludes our video on bag speed and the conditions that affect it. Also, our bag selection and strategy for the Throwdown 2022. We hope you find this information valuable and you put it to use to help boost your PPR at your next tournament. To score these bags and others bags like them in the future, please be sure to follow us on Facebook and visit our website at ultracornhole.com. Thank you.